In 1810, a Scottish minister named Henry Duncan opened a savings institution in the village of Ruthwell, not for merchants or landowners, for farmhands, mill workers, and laborers who'd never held more than a few shillings at once. His colleagues thought he was wasting his time. The poor, they argued, would just spend it. Duncan had a different theory. He believed the problem wasn't that working people couldn't save, it was that they'd never experienced what it felt like to have a buffer between themselves and the next disaster. Once they felt that, their behavior would change in ways no lecture ever could. The bank worked, but here's what gets left out of the history books. The shift didn't happen gradually as balances climbed. It happened at a threshold. Once a depositor crossed roughly 1 month of wages in reserve, something broke loose. They stopped borrowing from predatory lenders at the first sign of trouble. They started negotiating wages instead of accepting whatever was offered. The money hadn't made them rich. It had changed the conditions under which every financial decision got made. 200 years later, that exact threshold effect is sitting inside your bank account, completely misunderstood. My name's Joe, and I spend too much time studying the specific dollar amounts where financial behavior actually changes, not just compound interest math, the mechanics of how people operate differently once they cross certain lines. If you've ever looked at a $5,000 savings target and thought it barely moves the needle in the big picture, subscribe and watch this video, because that belief is costing you more than the $5,000 itself. $5,000 is not a savings milestone, it's a threshold. It's the point where your financial decision-making architecture changes at a structural level. Misunderstand what it is, and you'll drain it, reset to zero, and spend years wondering why financial advice that works in theory keeps failing in your actual life. Let me explain the mechanism. Think of your financial life like a water system with a pressure gauge. When the reservoir is empty, nothing flows without you forcing it manually. Every financial event becomes a crisis. Car repair, emergency. Medical bill, emergency. Rent increase, emergency. You're not making bad decisions because you're bad with money. You're operating a system with zero pressure behind it. Every leak is a catastrophe because there's no reserve to absorb it. Now add $5,000. Pressure builds. A car repair becomes an annoyance, not a disaster. A surprise bill gets paid without putting it on a credit card at 22%. You stop choosing buy now, pay later because you can actually afford to wait. You stop keeping a job you hate because 2 weeks of income gap would destroy you. The decisions you make from a pressurized system are structurally different from the ones you make running on empty. Behavioral economists at Princeton published research in Science magazine showing that financial scarcity measurably reduces cognitive performance, effects comparable to losing a full night of sleep. Your zero-balance brain is literally less capable of making the decisions that would fix the situation. $5,000 returns the bandwidth the stress was consuming. Here's the false belief I want to destroy. Most people treat saving as linear. Each dollar adds the same marginal value as the one before it, so $5,000 feels like step 1 of a 200-step staircase where every step is identical. That framing is wrong. The first $5,000 is not step 1 of the staircase. It's the foundation the staircase is built on. Every dollar you save above it is being saved by a version of you operating with lower stress, clearer thinking, and more decision-making flexibility. Every dollar you try to save below it is being saved by a version of you fighting anxiety, urgency, and the constant pull of financial threat. These are not the same activity. I watched this play out with someone I'll call Marcus. 29 years old, logistics manager, $60,000 a year, and persistently had between $200 and $400 in his checking account. Not because he was irresponsible. Every time he built any cushion, something happened. The automated transfer overdrafted. He'd cancel it, reset to zero. He told me once that saving felt like filling a bathtub with the drain open. Then his company paid a small retention bonus. After taxes, he had $4,800. He moved it to a separate account and let it sit. 6 weeks later, something had quietly shifted. He'd declined expensive dinners he didn't want. He'd negotiated his phone bill down $30 a month. He'd turned down overtime he didn't want. 8 months later, his balance was $6,200. He hadn't made dramatic changes. He had just stopped operating from panic mode. Now here's the trap that destroys this advantage. The moment you hit $5,000, your brain reclassifies the money. It stops reading it as a structural buffer and starts reading it as a reward balance. You sacrificed. You finally have savings. The vacation you've been putting off. The upgrade you've earned. This mechanism resets more savings accounts than any unexpected expense ever will. It's not weakness. Our culture around money actively encourages this reframing. You hit a goal, you celebrate, you spend. But $5,000 is not a finish line, it's a floor. Spending through it drops you back into the scarcity operating mode you just escaped. I know someone, call him Derek, who hit $5,000 saved for the first time at 32. 4 months later, he booked a vacation for $2,700 because he'd earned it. Then an appliance broke, then a car registration landed. 7 months later, he was back at $900, starting over, confused about why the reset kept happening. He didn't fail from bad luck. He failed because he treated a floor like a reward account with a spending trigger. Here's the protocol. 3 rules you set before you hit the threshold, not after. The decision needs to exist before your brain switches into reward mode. Rule 1. Rename the account before you fund it. Don't call it savings, don't call it emergency fund. Call it something structural, pressure reserve, optionality floor. The language signals floor, not surplus. People who name accounts with structural labels spend from them differently than people who name them with goal-oriented labels. Derek booked his flight from an account labeled emergency fund and told himself it wasn't really an emergency. Rule 2. Automate above it into a completely separate account. The $5,000 does not grow by being added to. It sits. All new contributions go into a second account. Automated investments, goal savings, everything meant to accumulate goes somewhere else. 2 accounts, 2 purposes. Your brain stops treating them as one pile. Rule 3. Write down your replenishment rule today. If a real emergency ever draws the floor below $5,000, specify now exactly what spending you will redirect into it until it's restored. Don't make this call under stress, because under stress, your judgment is the thing that's compromised. Most people say they'll replenish eventually. They don't. The account stays depleted, scarcity mode reinstates, and within months their decision-making looks exactly like it did before the buffer existed. Here's the identity shift I want to leave you with. Almost every piece of financial advice assumes you're already operating in a rational, low-anxiety state where you can evaluate long-horizon trade-offs, hold through volatility, and delay gratification consistently. The entire architecture of personal finance assumes this. Buy the index fund, automate contributions, don't panic sell. All of it is technically correct. All of it is harder to execute from chronic financial anxiety. You can read every compound interest book ever published and still fail to implement any of it if your checking account hovers near zero, because the bandwidth you need to act patiently is exactly what financial stress consumes. Henry Duncan's depositors didn't get rich because they crossed a specific balance number. They got rich because they stopped making the desperate short-term decisions that kept them poor. The buffer was the unlock. Everything else followed. Most people treat the first $5,000 like a stepping stone on the way to real money. It isn't. It's the foundation that determines whether everything built above it holds. Build it. Protect it. Set the rules before your brain talks you out of them. And if you want to understand what changes at the next threshold, the one where your money starts out-earning your contributions, that video is next. Stick around.